Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Hui Yu Hao's spiritual power could only reach 30 meters away from the city wall. There were already people shouting, cursing, and chasing people away from the top of the city wall, while patrols began to pay attention to Hui Yu Hao and the others. The three of them hurriedly switched directions, and put on a submissive demeanor as they followed the southern city wall towards the east. Hui Yu Hao relayed what he had just observed to Shu Sanxia and Yi Gai as they walked. "What do you plan to do?" Shu Sanxia asked. Hui Yu Hao answered, "We have to go inside and take a look. We will use the same method as we did back at Radiant City. Afterwards, you guys will book a room in a nearby inn, while Gai will go back and relay our plans to the others. Third senior brother, you will protect me. Tonight, I will release my spiritual avatar, so that I can take a look inside." Shu Sanxia frowned and said, "Isn't that too dangerous? There are evil soul masters inside, and every evil soul master is adept at controlling souls and spirits. Furthermore, there are so many surveillance soul tools. Will those things affect you?" Hui Yu Hao shook his head and said, "Surveillance soul tools can't deal with spiritual power, so it's safest if I send my spiritual avatar inside. I will be as careful as I can, and I will immediately pull out and run away if something is amiss." Investigating and scouting with Hui Yu Hao's spiritual avatar was drastically different from using spiritual detection. Spiritual detection could be withdrawn in an instant, and Hui Yu Hao would have nothing to fear even if he was discovered. After all, his enemies could only lock onto his location if they were very close, or if they possessed formidable spiritual power, like that evil soul master he had dispatched the other day. Hui Yu Hao could just open his Eye of Destiny to shake off his enemies even if they had locked onto his location. However, he could reach a lot further with his spiritual avatar, and he would have a lot more flexibility. However, his spiritual avatar was formed from his spiritual power and part of his spirit, and that entity wasn't something that he could withdraw at a whim. Hui Yu Hao would definitely be heavily injured if his enemies were able to restrain or destroy his spiritual avatar. This endeavor was a lot more perilous. Of course, his spiritual avatar would give him the best investigation and reconnaissance results. The Tang sect didn't have a better alternative solution for now. Shu Sanxia deliberated for a moment before he patted Hui Yu Hao on his shoulder and said, "Be careful, then. Let's go and find a place to stay. Gai, come back after you return to inform others, and you will join me to protect Yu Hao. It'll be a lot safer if we have one more person protecting him." "All right." Yi Gai agreed straightforwardly and happily. Sunrise City wasn't a large, vibrant, and bustling city, so searching for a small inn wasn't too difficult. They quickly found an inn that was more decrepit than the one that they had stayed in on city's northern side and booked 3 rooms. Hui Yu Hao immediately began to meditate in the center room after everyone settled down. He tried to recover the spiritual power that he had expended before, while Shu Sanxia watched the landscape and their surroundings, and Gai returned to the city's northern side. The three of them worked together as they made their preparations nervously. Time always passed rapidly during meditation, and the sky was now darkening. Hui Yu Hao didn't have anything to eat, but he was back to his full strength and energy. He informed Shu Sanxia before he immediately released his spiritual avatar. Hui Yu Hao released his spiritual avatar a lot more smoothly than back then. Furthermore, Hui Yu Hao released a lot more spiritual power and more of his spirit, so that he could accomplish as much as he could on this reconnaissance mission. Shu Sanxia was full of awe and admiration as he watched a faint golden projection that looked identical to Hui Yu Hao appear in front of him. Third senior brother. Hui Yu Hao's original body was just sitting there while his spiritual avatar greeted Shu Sanxia. Shu Sanxia sounded a little helpless as he said, "Go, quickly. I'm afraid that your spirit will split." Hui Yu Hao chortled and said, "You don't understand us spiritual type soul masters' control over spiritual power. I'll be fine. Just wait and see what I can do. Here I go." Hui Yu Hao's spiritual avatar drifted into the air as he spoke, and he sipped out the window quickly. The pale golden hues disappeared from the air at the same time. Hui Yuhao could attach even more abilities to his spiritual avatar after his spiritual power and his ability to control it were enhanced. Of course, he could only attach abilities that belonged to his spirit eyes. Hui Yuhao activated imitation, and his spiritual avatar vanished into the night sky as he left the inn. He was in spiritual form, but his spiritual avatar was a product of his concrete immaterial spiritual power, similar to his original body. Hui Yuhao could only fly at a certain height above the ground. Otherwise, he would be affected by the winds in the sky, and he would expend a lot more spiritual power. He could even run the risk of shaking and damaging his spirit. Hui Yuhao's spiritual avatar was completely concealed at this moment. Just as Hui Yuhao had said, the surveillance soul tools on top of the city wall were useless against him. Hui Yuhao's spiritual avatar quickly scaled the city wall, and he arrived by the city's moat. Inside the city, Hui Yuhao was still sitting inside the inn with his legs crossed. He gestured to Shusansha to signal that everything was all right, before he entered meditation right away, and focused all his strength and energy on controlling his spiritual avatar, as he disappeared into the river water. Hui Yuhao's spiritual avatar trembled conspicuously as he entered the turbid river water. Hui Yuhao had to consume a lot more spiritual power when his spiritual avatar was inside the water, but he had already found the right place before this, so his expedition was still relatively smooth for now. Hui Yuhao went right through the iron fencing beneath the water and swam forward swiftly. His spiritual avatar activated spiritual detection at the same time and searched around in front of him. The river water behind the iron fence was still as turbid as before. Hui Yuhao controlled his spiritual avatar and swam forward for several dozen meters, and felt he had swum back into the city from under its walls. Abruptly, everything in front of him changed, and he could hear some sounds. Hui Yuhao's spiritual avatar emerged from the water's surface, and immediately witnessed a shocking sight. Feng Lin was right, this place was a water prison. The entire place was constructed from tough granite, while row after row of steel cages were neatly arranged. The water prison covered an incredibly large surface area. There were between 8 to 10 people imprisoned inside each cage, and each cage was filled with water that was at least 1 meter deep, so the turbid water soaked everyone. Almost every single prisoner trapped inside had ghastly pale faces, and their auras were extremely weak. The prisoners inside this water prison almost couldn't rest, and they could only lean to one side. Hui Yuhao vaguely identified these prisoners as the team members and leaders that belonged to the various academies and sects who had gone to Radiant City to participate in the Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament. Hui Yuhao and the Tang sect had even crossed paths with some of these people during the tournament. However, their auras were all very weak at this moment, and not a single soul power undulation appeared on their bodies. Hui Yuhao withdrew his spiritual detection after a brief scan of the area. He was sure that evil soul masters stood guard in this place, and he had no idea if there were more spiritual type evil soul masters present. Furthermore, his spiritual power was too strong, so even normal evil soul masters could easily detect him if they were a little more sensitive. Hui Yuhao began to inspect and survey those cages and recognized more and more familiar faces inside them. Hui Yuhao didn't know most of their names, but he had impressions of them to varying extents. He heaved a faint sigh inside. These people are all elites and prodigies of their generation. They could represent their respective academies and sects for that tournament. Which of them isn't one of the most outstanding individuals of the younger generation? The Sun Moon Empire risked universal condemnation by imprisoning them. They had thoroughly and completely antagonized the Doluo continent's 3 native empires, while using these hostages to suppress and restrain the academies and sects that belonged to the Doluo continent's 3 native empires, so that they wouldn't join a war or conflict between the empires so easily. The Sun Moon Empire was treacherous and scheming at the same time. There were 2 main rows of water prisons. There was a stone platform about 1 meter above the water's surface in the middle of these 2 rows. This stone platform stretched straight forward, and several guards in black cloaks paced and patrolled back and forth. Hui Yuhao didn't have to deliberately survey those patrols to feel the evil and chilly auras that emanated from these evil soul masters. This water prison was located within the city's walls, and this meant that Fong Lin's information wasn't entirely accurate. The water prison borrowed the city's moat, but it was located within the city walls, not outside. Furthermore, Hu Yuhao could tell from how the water was directed and diverted that there was undoubtedly an entrance within the city that led into this water prison. Hu Yuhao had an exceptionally strong sense of direction. It only took him a moment of thought to roughly determine this entrance's position. What rendered him a little speechless was that this entrance was actually located inside a bunker beside the southern city wall. Bunkers were specifically designed to accommodate soldiers, so that they could rest temporarily when they were defending the city. This bunker was located next to the city gate, and soldiers inside it could swiftly reinforce the city gate if they went down, while they could rapidly ascend to the top of the city wall if they went up. What a great arrangement, indeed. Bunkers were always guarded by soldiers at any point in time. Adding on the countless surveillance Seoul tools that were located near the city gate, and infiltrating this bunker without being discovered was almost impossible. Hu Yuhao was about to make his judgment when he suddenly saw several evil soul masters walk over to his position. The evil soul masters, who had been patrolling before this, separated respectfully to both sides of the stone platform. Every single one of these patrols bent down and looked very respectful and reverent. The evil soul masters who were strolling over didn't have cloaks covering their bodies, and Hu Yuhao was actually familiar with them. Those walking in front of everyone else were the third elder and the fourth elder. Hu Yuhao had seen them before at the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament. The third elder had considered taking him in as his disciple then. Hu Yuhao was even more familiar with those who followed behind these two elders. They were the three evil brothers, Zhong Litian, Zhong Lidi, and Zhong Liren. All three of them were 8-ringed evil soul Doluor, and they were adept at manipulating all kinds of beast souls to fight for them. Hu Yuhao had rescued 2 infant dark golden terraclaw bears from their evil clutches back then, and the Tang sect had been taking good care of them. The bears were growing very quickly, and Bei Bei had even requested specialists from Shrek Academy's Beast Dueling Division to procure a diet so that the Tang sect could feed them better. The bears were still young, but their strength was increasing at an alarming rate. Right now, they were strong enough to stand guard at the Tang sect's main gate. The bears had been most intimate with Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga before this, but Hu Yuhao didn't have much time for them now because there were just so many things he had to do. Hu Yuhao had already decided that he would bring those bears with him when he ventured into the Setting Sun Forest to help his eldest senior brother search for medicinal herbs to treat teacher Xiao Yue. There were only a few immortal herbs that Hu Yuhao could retrieve from the Icefire Yin-Yang well, but there were still quite a lot of supplementary and nutritious items. The dark golden terraclaw bears would have no problem eating a little more because of their physiques, and these herbs could catalyze their growth. The bears would eventually become the Tang sect's divine beast guardians. Hu Yuhao hadn't expected to meet these 5 evil soul masters when he had just arrived, and his real body drew a cold breath when he saw them. 2 of them were title Doluor, while the other 3 were soul Doluor. The 5 of them had the strength to fight against 5 title Doluor at the same time. Furthermore, there were at least several dozen evil soul masters stationed in this place, and he had no clue how many other exceptionally powerful evil soul masters were here, and there were 2 soul engineer legions outside. Sunrise City also wasn't that far away from Radiant City, so Radiant City could muster reinforcements in no time. The Sun Moon Empire's arrangements were incredibly meticulous and tight. Battle had to have broken out at the borders, but the Sun Moon Empire could still afford such an arrangement. This level of defensive strength wasn't something that the Tang sect could fight. Hu Yuhao continued to contemplate as he controlled his spiritual avatar and flew over to one of the cages. He hid discreetly in one corner and completely suppressed his spiritual undulations. He didn't dare to release even a single bit of spiritual power. The 3rd and 4th elders scanned the prisoners inside the water prisons as they strolled. The hostages could naturally see them too, and glared at them with vengeful eyes as they walked by. However, these hostages were just too weak, and they didn't even have the strength to curse and swear. The 3rd elder said as he walked, "Are we good on our restraints? Are we using enough drugs?" "We are using enough. We infuse soul eradicating powder into the water every day. With this powder dissolving in the water, not even titled Doluor can think about concentrating and mustering their soul power. Furthermore, these fellows haven't eaten anything in a long time, and they must be weak and limp even with their physiques as soul masters. Several prisoners have fainted, but we gave them sufficient nutrition in time, Zhong Litian answered. The third elder paused and turned back as he glanced at Zhong Litian. Ah Tien, you still have to give them food. These people can't possibly cause any disturbances or trouble with our soul eradicating powder, but we can't let them starve to death, because they are still very valuable to our leader in the future. I know you and your brothers have a great need for these powerful spirits, but now is not the time. Do you understand? Yes, third elder. Zhong Litian nodded. One could tell from his expression that he didn't quite approve of the third elder's words, but he was very respectful towards the man nonetheless. Zhong Litian immediately continued, I will make the necessary arrangements now, and we will give them some food. Second brother, third brother, let's go together. He nodded in the third elder and fourth elder's direction before turning and leaving. A cold look flashed by the fourth elder's eyes as he watched them leave. He lowered his voice and said, These brothers are pushing it more and more, just because they are the leader's slaves. Do they have to go personally to get some food for those prisoners? They are clearly trying to show defiance. The third elder glanced at the fourth elder, and a disdainful and indifferent look flowed from his eyes. Don't spout nonsense, fourth brother. The three of them are under the leader's personal command, and we are also loyal to the leader. We have to place our church's interests as our top priority. These were his words, but a cold look flickered in his eyes at the same time. He was very displeased with how the three brothers were handling things. They followed the stone platform, and went up and down once through the water prison before walking out. Hui Yuhao had been quietly observing them this entire time. He was delighted. These two titled Doluor have some beef with the three brothers, and furthermore, the three brothers should be the ones in control of this water prison. This is important intel. I will have a better chance of rescuing the prisoners if I make good use of this information. Also, what's that soul eradicating powder? The water inside this water prison is connected to moat outside. Are they not afraid of this powder losing its effects? Hui Yuhao drifted discreetly towards the entrance he had come in from. He didn't waste this trip, and had discovered and scouted out many things. He needed to go back so that he could digest everything further before he could determine how to rescue these prisoners. Hui Yuhao was about to submerge himself into the water, and was going to bring back some water samples, when something happened at the stone platform's other end. The third elder and the fourth elder were just walking out, when they uttered reverently, Greetings, Holy Lady. Holy Lady. The Holy Ghost Church's Holy Lady is here. Hui Yuhao vaguely recalled that Tang Ya had been addressed in a similar fashion. His operation would be a lot harder if teacher Xiao Ya was here. How could he save Tang Ya with his current strength? Hui Yuhao paused in his tracks, and looked over to the stone platform's other end. The third elder and the fourth elder were standing on either side of the platform, while the three evil brothers and a girl who was clad in a long dark red dress began to walk towards him. Hui Yuhao's eyes went slack when he saw this girl, and he could no longer shift his eyes away. Hui Yuhao lost control of his spiritual undulations, and they became a little disorganized. Who goes there? The third elder suddenly snarled. Even though controlling spirits wasn't his forte, he was the strongest amongst the evil soul masters in this place. The third elder immediately detected Hui Yuhao, as soon as his spiritual power showed a little disorder. However, this exclamation jolted Hui Yuhao out of his shock and lifelessness. He didn't dare to stay even a single moment longer, and his spiritual avatar dove into the water in a flash, as he started swimming outwards as fast as he could. The girl decked in the flowing dark red dress grunted coldly, as she raised her right hand and pressed forward through the air. A thick and intense dark red light instantly drilled through where Hui Yuhao had dove into the water, and the beam's scorching heat immediately dyed the turbid moat's water a dark red color, as large amounts of steam surged into the air. Hui Yuhao was still escaping through the water as quickly as he could, and he immediately felt a wave of searing heat attacking him from behind in the next moment. Hui Yuhao wouldn't be afraid if his original body had been here. He would have his ultimate ice to protect him, and any fire-type abilities would have trouble causing him any damage at all. However, at this very moment, he only had his spiritual avatar. His avatar couldn't possibly have his ultimate ice-type soul power. Hui Yuhao's spiritual avatar weakened rapidly, as that searing heat assaulted him, and even his spiritual origin was shaken. Hui Yuhao could clearly feel that this heatwave his enemy had launched against him, which was full of heat and darkness, also possessed an ability to track and lock onto spiritual undulations. He had absolutely no chance of escaping before this heatwave could eradicate his spiritual avatar. "Sister!" Hui Yuhao called out desperately, and his spiritual avatar unleashed spiritual shock at the same time. The heatwave that was running him down brutally suddenly paused, and Hui Yuhao immediately took advantage of this instant as he picked up the pace and rushed through the iron fence outside. He emerged from the city's moat and soared into the sky as he followed his original path and escaped through the air. Inside the water prison, the Holy Lady personally took action, so the third elder, the fourth elder, and the three brothers had looked on from the side. They had absolute faith in this Holy Lady's strength. But in the next moment, they watched as the Holy Lady frowned and said, "That's strange, some spiritual undulations did appear before this. Can it be that we are too sensitive? My phoenix flames didn't find anything." The third elder said, "Can it be that there's too much vengeance and resentment inside the water prison, and that has produced a lifeless spiritual form?" The Holy Lady turned towards the three brothers and said, "Check it out carefully." The three brothers were a lot more respectful towards her, and all three of them bowed reverently as they acknowledged, "Yes, Holy Lady." The Holy Lady turned and walked towards the exit. A vacant look that had a tinge of struggle flashed deep in her eyes, but these emotional changes were instantly extinguished by the dark red flames in her eyes. Hui Yuhao scaled the city wall and crossed to the other side after he left the water. He rushed back to the hotel as quickly as he could and reintegrated his spiritual avatar into his body. Jade green light gradually rose through the air, and only then did Hui Yuhao dispel the heat filled with evil that lingered in his spirit. Hui Yuhao expelled a deep breath and gradually opened his eyes. Shu Sansha and Yi Gai had been protecting him by his side this entire time. They instantly saw the shock deep in Hui Yuhao's eyes the moment he opened his eyes. "What's wrong, Yuhao?" Shu Sansha asked softly. Hui Yuhao leapt down from his bed and took a deep breath. "Sister Xiaodao. I saw Sister Xiaodao. Sister Xiaodao. Are you referring to Ma Xiaodao?" An astonished expression immediately came over Shu Sanshi's face as he stared at Hui Yuhao with blank eyes and slack jaw. He was at a loss for words. Hui Yuhao nodded vigorously. His lips were pressed tightly together, and he couldn't maintain his composure at this moment no matter how much self-control he had. "Yes, it's her, my sister. She's really at the Holy Ghost Church, and they have actually kidnapped her. She's their Holy Lady now." The scene that he had just seen was deeply imprinted in his mind. She was wearing a long dark red dress, and had seemed so coolly elegant and glamorous. She also possessed scorching phoenix flames, so who else could that be but Ma Xiaodao? Ma Xiaodao looked a lot more mature compared to 5 years ago. Her enchanting features had an extra tinge of cold mystery that came from darkness, while her figure had become more exaggerated and alluring. Ma Xiaotao's status had surpassed that of those two elders, who were titled Doluo. Holy Lady, she was actually addressed as Holy Lady, just like teacher Xiao Ya. What exactly had happened to her? The two of them had no words as they stared at one another. Yi Gai was befuddled as she listened on from one side. "Ma Xiaodao. Who's that?" Hui Yuhao explained as concisely as he could. "She's our senior, and she also graduated from Shrek Academy. Her martial soul had some problems, and she was captured by evil soul masters. She seems confused and is not in her right state of mind right now, and she's become the Holy Ghost Church's Holy Lady." Yi Gai didn't have a good impression of any evil soul masters. She frowned and asked, "How powerful is she?" Hui Yuhao took a deep breath. He already had his initial judgments from the strength that Ma Xiaodao had displayed before this. Her martial soul is an evil phoenix, and she's inherited that from Shrek Academy's first 7 monsters. Her martial soul seems to have completely mutated into a dark phoenix now. You can visualize that as ultimate fire that possesses the element of darkness. In terms of element, the two of us have to team up against her to even stand a chance at restraining her. However, she has 8 soul rings. If my senses are right, my sister's soul power has increased enough for her to have 8 soul rings, but she's not a soul doluo. Yi Gai drew a cold breath as she heard Hui Yuhao's words. She hadn't wasted her time at the Tang sect when she was there, and she now knew a lot more about soul masters. An 8-ringed soul doluo who possessed ultimate fire, what kind of concept was that? This existence was probably more terrifying than normal soul masters, who had just become titled doluo. Furthermore, she also wielded the element of darkness. Shu Sanxia forced a laugh and said, if that weren't the case, how could she become the Holy Lady? In the previous Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy tournament, Xiao Dao was Shrek's team leader, and her martial soul mutated, because she unleashed too much power during the tournament's final round. She was eventually kidnapped by the Holy Ghost Church. We are in trouble now, because she isn't just powerful. We can't kill her, so we have already lost this battle in psychological terms. Hui Yuhao shook his head softly and said, that may not be true. Sister Xiao Dao doesn't seem to have lost her mind as completely as teacher Xiao Ya has. Her ultimate fire is just too brutal and violent. Even the evil soul masters might not be able to control her emotions entirely. I tested her before this, and she seemed to respond to my voice. If I can break her out of her trance, then our operation will have a much higher chance of success. No, that's too dangerous, Shu Sanxia muttered. Hui Yuhao laughed bitterly and said, I have to try no matter how dangerous it is, because she's already here. Leave right now, the two of you. Her mental state is still a little confused. Don't worry, even if I can't defeat her, I know how to escape. Yes, Ma Xiaodao was here. Ma Xiaodao was standing on the street outside therein, still dressed in her long dark red dress, and just silently standing there. It was now late at night, and there wasn't a single soul on the street. She was waiting quietly, as if she were the sovereign queen of the dark night. She had locked onto Hui Yuhao way before this with her spiritual power. Hui Yuhao had felt a thread of Ma Xiaotao's spirit locking onto his avatar when he was escaping. Thoughts spun in his mind like lightning when that happened, and he made a decision. The Holy Ghost Church had stationed more forces in Sunrise City than he had predicted. If he couldn't break through via Ma Xiaodao, their operation would have a less than 50% chance of success. After all, they had to help several hundred people escape. He had some confidence to break the locks and restraints, but getting a sufficient distance away safely was too difficult. Hui Yuhao leapt through the window and landed on the street outside quietly. He stared at Ma Xiaodao opposite him, and his eyes gradually became excited and passionate. An image surfaced in his memory. He was back on the Sea God's Lake's shores, and Ma Xiaodao had nearly murdered them, because she had lost her mind. He felt like he was back inside the icy lake water once more, when his soul power had interacted with Ma Xiaotao's soul power. Ma Xiaodao was his hot-tempered sister, but she had always been concerned about him, and she had always cared about him. He felt so much love and kinship from Ma Xiaodao, and even a little bit of gentle charm. Back inside the room, Yi Gai wanted to follow Hui Yuhao outside, but Shu Sanxia grabbed her arm. Let's go. But she's an evil soul master who possesses ultimate fire. She's also a soul doluo, how can you how? Shu Sanxia lowered his voice and said, trust him. We can't help him here, and we will only attract more enemies. Let's go. He dragged Yi Gai forcefully as he spoke, and they rose through the air and jumped through another window on the other side, before they vanished into the night sky in the blink of an eye. Do I know you? Ma Xiaotao's voice sounded a little husky amidst her coldness, while her voice was a lot more pleasing to the ear than before. Of course. Hui Yuhao took a deep breath, as he forcefully suppressed his riling emotions at the same time. Who are you? A thread of struggle flickered beneath Ma Xiaotao's eyes. Her emotions were a little off and confused since she had sensed Hu Yuhao's outcry inside the water, and scene after blurry scene flashed by in her mind. She felt as if something very important was about to happen, or had already happened before. "I'm Hu Yuhao, your younger brother." Hu Yuhao removed his makeup as he spoke and revealed his true face. "Hu Yuhao. That name sounds familiar. Who is that?" Ma Xiaotao's eyes became even more confused and perplexed. Hu Yuhao gradually stepped towards Ma Xiaodao. He was walking very slowly, but every step was very stable. He had been observing the dark red flames that were dancing in Ma Xiaotao's eyes this entire time. "Sister, I am Yuhao. Do you still remember me? We first met on the shores of the Sea God's Lake, on Shrek Academy's Sea God's Lake. You lost control of yourself because of your evil fire back then, and you nearly killed Donga and I. My martial soul possesses ultimate ice, and I have suppressed the evil fire inside your body multiple times. You treated me as if you were my own sister, and you loved me and took care of me. We participated in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy tournament together, and we eventually clinched the championship and defended Shrek's honor. You were our team leader, and you were the one who led us to our ultimate glory. Hu Yuhao. Shrek." Ma Xiaodao seemed to have remembered some things. Suddenly, she took a step out and instantly appeared before Hu Yuhao, grabbing at Hu Yuhao's shoulder with one hand. Hu Yuhao didn't dodge, and he didn't use any of his abilities. He just let her grab him however she wanted, and a wave of searing heat poured into him from Ma Xiaotao's palm. Hu Yuhao could see dark red flames rising from her right hand, and the clothes on his shoulder were immediately burnt to a crisp, then into ash. What was more terrifying was that Hu Yuhao's skin was starting to burn, and half his body subsequently became dark red. Hu Yuhao's body reacted instinctively at this moment. Green light surged from his body, and the outline of his skeleton could be seen as green light continued to flicker. Intense chills subsequently burst forth, and collided with that wave of searing heat. Hu Yuhao and Ma Xiaotao's bodies glowed at the same time. One body flickered with green light glimmering with faint icy blue, while the other rippled with dark red light. The air around her was starting to twist and contort from all that heat. Ultimate ice and ultimate fire, two great extremities, and two formidable soul power types that were polar opposites of one another, fought against each other on Hu Yuhao's shoulder. Ma Xiaodao had a much stronger cultivation than Hu Yuhao, but for some reason, her ultimate fire couldn't continue deeper once it entered his body. The Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion's skeleton amplified Hu Yuhao's elemental strength, and he had also assimilated part of the Snow Empress and the Ice Empress origin power, which had allowed him to raise his ultimate ice to another level. Hu Yuhao's elemental power still surpassed Ma Xiaotao's. No matter what, Ma Xiaotao's ultimate fire wasn't pure enough, because it also possessed the element of darkness. But Hu Yuhao still winced in pain and agony. This contest between the two extremities was still occurring in his body, and Ma Xiaodao just had to slap him with her palm if she wanted to kill him. Hu Yuhao could break free from her clutches, but he would have to pay a heavy price, and he didn't move, because he didn't want to abandon this opportunity. He was very clear that he only had a chance to move her when her emotions were still considered stable, and he wouldn't stand a chance at all when her emotions became confused and disorganized once more. Hu Yuhao's glossy eyes were filled with passion and emotion, and he resisted the intense pain in his shoulder with great difficulty, as he called out softly, "Sister, sister." Ma Xiaotao's hand that was holding him suddenly stiffened, when she felt his ultimate ice fighting back against her, and she just stared at Hu Yuhao from a close distance away. The light around them, with the two of them at its center, was twisted. The high-altitude surveillance soul tools in the sky couldn't see anything at all. The reason for that was because this entire region was within Hu Yuhao's spiritual interference and imitation. Two powerful million-year soul skills were being used together, and unless there were thermal detectors close to where they were, nothing could possibly detect them. Furthermore, even if there were thermal detectors nearby, this contest between ultimate ice and ultimate fire going on between them meant that it wouldn't take more than 3 seconds before those thermal detectors exploded. "Sister," Hu Yuhao was still calling out to her. "You are..." Yuhao, A tinge of consciousness finally appeared within the fires dancing in Ma Xiaotao's eyes. Yes. It's me, Yu Hao. Hui Yu Hao called out softly. No, you're my enemy. The dark red flames deep in Ma Xiaotao's eyes became stronger, and she applied strength once more with the hand that was still holding onto Hui Yu Hao's shoulder. Hui Yu Hao gritted his teeth, and he called out yet again with a hoarse voice. Sister. Ma Xiaotao's hand loosened a little more. The skin on Hui Yu Hao's shoulder had peeled off, revealing his tendons and the flesh beneath. Hui Yu Hao's life gold bestowed immense life energy to him, but even his life gold couldn't help him repair his tissues amidst the standoff between ultimate ice and ultimate fire. Fresh blood was vaporized continuously as Hui Yu Hao's life energy seeped away. Tears flickered in Hui Yu Hao's gleaming eyes. Sister, do you know how much I've missed you over the years? I have no family, and I've always treated you like my own sister. I've suffered so much pain and agony for so long after you disappeared without a trace. I've finally found you, sister. Don't ever leave me again, okay? He took a step forward as he spoke as he reached out with his right hand for Ma Xiaotao's waist. Ma Xiaodao instantly raised her left hand and cut towards Hui Yu Hao's neck. Right at that moment, Hui Yu Hao's glistening eyes suddenly flared as he shouted at the top of his voice, Sister. Ma Xiaotao's left hand stopped half a foot away from Hui Yu Hao's neck, just like that. Ultimate fire continued to burn, as the light of ultimate ice rippled continuously from Hui Yu Hao's body. He took this chance, and his right hand finally wrapped itself around Ma Xiaotao's waist as he hugged her well-developed body tightly. Part 1 end here.